to Mindless Monday. This is a podcast about real life. This is a podcast where we take off the mask and we not only speak from a space of authenticity, but authority. Happy Monday, guys, and welcome back. Welcome back. I am so excited to be here with you guys yet another Monday. You know that this is a Monday that we'll never see again. So I'm always an advocate for really taking that in and understanding that life can be very fleeting. And so it's important to be present. It's important to get out of our heads and into our body. And that kind of is what I want to talk about this episode. I want to start with vulnerability per usual. So if you're new here, that's just how we roll. And I want to talk about where I am and kind of the message that I've been getting to help myself that I want to give to you guys. It is super important that we take heed to what's being said today because it is kind of a part of the foreshadow of what's to come when it comes to the change of seasons. We're in mid-August, so we'll get to that. But anyway, I've been kind of going through it, it meaning the current of emotions. As a lot of you guys know, I had a daughter who's a senior in high school. And while, the beginning of that ended up with an episode about me being very reflective of all that I've gone through, just raising her. I think as I settled into just those thoughts and being able to release that in podcast form was amazing, but also it really allowed me to go deeper. And when I say deeper, I mean deep. So if you're not a parent, I don't want you to feel like this is not relatable to you, but I do want you to understand that if you decide to be a parent, if you have chosen to be a parent, that's something that you want to do. That is like turning the volume up on your human experience. If you decide not to be a parent, it does not mean that you're not going to experience these radical transformations. But most of the time, our radical transformations are triggered through experiences and relationships. And so your relationships, whether it be career, whether it be personal, will always be the catalyst for your growth. And then if you're someone like me that's decided to add children in the mix, we have just turned up the volume. So that's just my opinion on that. But when I mean turn up the volume, I have a physical representation of who I am or who I was at 17, or at least a version of that. I don't identify with my child like she's me, but I do see so many similarities between us because, of course, I raised her and I created her, right? And so yesterday we actually went to her first consultation for like drawing out her prom dress. She's going to 2 proms. And so, getting 2 dresses made and just all the things. And, it was so emotional for me. I held it in, I did really good, but it was emotional and I'll tell you why. So it was emotional. Yes, I'm proud, but I'm looking at a success that I did not get to experience, meaning the life that my child has right now is not a life that I've been able to experience. It's not any version of my adolescence at all. And I think I wanted her not to experience the things that I experienced growing up. So I'm proud of myself. I've done a really great job. But at the same time, it is very triggering to see and feel how supported she is. And then to know that a lot of gaps in my awareness, a lot of gaps in my emotions, a lot of things that I'm still untangling and unraveling to this day is from that age period, right? From my adolescence. And so a lot of us will, we're always talking about shadow work and we're always talking about inner child work. But for me, over the last few years or a couple years, I feel like I've been reparenting and like really giving love to the teenage version of myself, right? And so, with that being said, it's a very vulnerable space to be in, because by the time I was her age, I was definitely promiscuous. I definitely was looking for love. I definitely had come to the conclusion that I I was going to be the one to have my back and me alone. At 17, I had already knew that my father was inconsistent and had a substance abuse problem. I already had pretty much figured the relationship between my mother and I would be estranged at times. I had navigated friendships, and that just wasn't, I don't think I was the best friend to people because I didn't have the capacity. I had a really big mother wound. And then I don't know if people were the best of friends to me at that age, you know? And so anyway, lots of trust issues, lots of insecurities, lots of things. And so now that I'm seeing my daughter navigate her confidence in such a beautiful way and like be decisive and just be very clear and like be on the road to college, which I didn't go to. It has been such a bittersweet space. And I wanted to come onto the podcast today and be honest about that, because I feel like even if you don't have a child, you may know what it feels like to feel that bittersweetness, to feel both joy and, you know, gut wrenching feelings and sadness at the same time. And if you're not careful, you will, and if you haven't created space, you will bypass this opportunity to actually take care of yourself in a different way. So I want to talk about creating space, because that is something that kind of I've been focused on this last week, because I'm really deciding, I'm really being decisive. I'm taking a page out of my daughter's book and I'm being decisive about who I am and what I want. I'm going to talk more about all the things that I've been doing in my masterclass this Thursday, but I'm just giving kind of a synopsis: who I am and what I want, being very, very intentional and decisive about that, right? And so a part of that, because I am an entrepreneur and I have an e-commerce business, you know, my brand KM, which stands for my name, Kimi Sean, has been through lots of changes, and it's grown with me. And so with this next website rebuild, which I'm doing by myself, I had kind of come into some blocks, into some mountains, I would call them, emotionally, because I was like, what do I want? Who am I? How do I want to say this? And I'm going to just insert this in here for those of you that use ChatGPT, Claude, or any form of AI. I'm not someone that's against advancement of technology, but I am someone that's against something taking away our autonomy. And I am against not having our own voice, because what I learned about AI when I was doing my site this last week is that it doesn't have a soul. And you can feel the soullessness in the words if you're just having something copy or project what you would like to say. And so I realized even through that, that I needed to be able to say these things and believe these things and translate that on my own when it came to product descriptions and like just describing what my brand is. And I even had to go down to like drawing a graph to figure out what is exactly my brand and how has it evolved. And I'll share later kind of what that evolved into, because it's such a beautiful thing that I've figured out. But yeah, that just had me in a tizzy, and I was getting a little frustrated, and I felt like I was so much in my head about it. And I realized that when my mind is full, right, I'm operating in with my analytical self. I'm not operating in my body. I'm not operating intuitively. And I'm forcing because I'm only using one part of myself. And a lot of the times when you're operating in that type of analytical mind frame or the logical mind frame or the structured mind frame, you'd cut off your creative supply. And I realized when I cut off my creative supply, in turn, I would get really frustrated and feel very fatigued and be like, oh, I'm never going to finish this, and a little discouraged if I'm being honest. And so I had to kind of go back to the drawing board. And so I end up picking up a book, and it's a book that some of you guys have probably read. It's actually called Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. And I'm going to plug this in right here too. If you're someone that has read books before and you have done significant leaps in your awareness, I would definitely suggest that you reread, because it's important that you reread with a new mindset. It's important that you reread with a new mind frame. And when I picked up the book, I started from the beginning, and it really put into perspective why I was feeling these things and the way that I was feeling them. It talked about how emotions are just the feedback of our past experiences. And I realized in that moment that I hadn't really created space for feedback. You know, we do all of this calling in of energy. We do all of this, I want to manifest this and I want to do that. But at what point are we creating space for feedback? Because if we're paying attention to the feedback, then we're understanding where we are, right? Our emotions, even when you want to manifest something, our emotions are so important when it comes to manifesting, because in order for you to manifest something, one of the key points is to embody the feeling of what you want already. And I think some of us are so focused on manifesting that we're bypassing some of our real feelings, and we're trying to skip steps of actually processing what's wanting to come up and what's wanting to be addressed, because we're so focused on our desire. And so, again, emotions are feedback from past experiences, and they're stored into the body. And for me, what was resurfacing with my child and then even with my website, it wasn't really about that. It's this survival energy that comes in when I'm creating something, or I feel like I'm on a time frame, or I feel like I have to decide or be concrete about something. Or also that same survival energy, like I said earlier, that I tapped into at 17 when I realized that I was responsible for my emotions, and like I didn't have really anybody that I could depend on. And so seeing her thrive is actually, and then having that roadblock in my my website creation really brought those feelings up, the survival energy. And it kind of got activated, because the emotions are in the same proximity. And I want you to understand that the heart can hold not just two, but multiple emotions at the same time. You have something called heart intelligence. And when your heart has intelligence, or because your heart has intelligence, it's able to feel multiple ranges of things at the same time. Now, a lot of us will think that we can only experience one emotion at a time. Like, I can't be happy and sad, or if I'm sad, I can't be happy. But at the end of the day, that's not factual. It has such a different intelligence. I feel like the heart has a brain within itself, and it's a whole ecosystem that is able to operate in the way where, when you are feeling things, and if you have the capacity, if you've created the capacity to feel things, then you can feel those things at the same time. A lot of us focus and key in on one emotion, especially if it's something that's really intense. But because I have been focused on creating space, I was able to feel the duality of everything that I was feeling. And it allowed my heart to be very, very tender. especially upon yesterday, because that was like the prom appointment thing. So my heart has just been very, very tender. And so for me, I thought that this was really important to kind of key into right now, because I feel like even listening to this podcast, we can get very caught up in just listening to so many uplifting, podcasts or media, or reading so many uplifting books, that we actually aren't giving ourselves the space to be still and to get curious about what it is that we need, what it is that wants to be addressed, and what it is that wants to be processed, and what we're ready to like how the room that we've created, what is ready to actually be processed, because we have created that room. You can't sit here with your head down and just continue to do work, 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 work. You have to breathe. You have to experience some joy. You have to be still. This is a process. Healing is not something that's a finish line. It is something that is a process. And because it is a process, it's important for you to be present in your process. This is really important as well because it's mid-August. The weather is still very hot here in Atlanta, Georgia, but I do want to say that, we can feel the tides turning. And when the weather begins to change, by nature, we are creatures of nature. We also are energetically, our body begins to shift. Our emotions begin to express themselves at a different frequency. We have less vitamin D. We're layering up more. Maybe we're inside more. There's just different things. That the leaves are changing if you're someone that is in the space of all seasons. So I'm speaking to those who experience all seasons. And even if you don't experience the same weather seasons as we do in Georgia, you still are going to experience emotional seasons. And especially as we move into the fall, it is kind of making headway for holidays that are typically celebrated in the US, which can bring about emotions because they're related to family. So with that being said, I just want to kind of give you guys a precursor, because I'm kind of foreshadowing a bit what's on the way, which is the ability for you to actually be a recipient of extreme abundance, but at the same time, still have work to do, still have emotions to feel, still have tears to shed, still have space to create. And I don't want you to think that the work that you've done is in vain because you're feeling all of these things. I want you to understand that that's the work actually working. And it's important. I wouldn't be myself and the guide and teacher that I am if I wasn't honest with you about the phases of healing. You're not going to always have sunny days. It's not going to always come together in the way that you would like it to come together. It's not going to always feel like you're hyper aware and everything is synced up and, you're getting all these downloads. That's not really the reality. And I think that part of the spiritual journey is glorified, but it's not really the reality. If you're someone that's really committed to doing your work, all of the things that you've been avoiding is literally the things that are going to help you get to a deeper level within self and another level in your life journey experience. This reminds me of the saying, I think it was a poem I read, is that the wound is where the light enters. And for me, that means, I'll say that again, the wound is where the light can enter. And what that means for me is that in order for you to operate in your light body, you have to be okay tending to your wounds. If you're someone that's an avoidant, I want you to know that you avoiding things is not you being the bigger person. Not addressing things is not you. What am I looking for, God? You not addressing things is not you operating at a higher frequency. Conflict is healthy. Anger, I've said this before, anger is a healthy emotion. Expression is a form of creativity. And I'm saying all this to say, if you're someone in your life that finds yourself complaining about the same things, without result, I would challenge you to actually go back into your awareness and see where these emotions are stemming from, not what they're projected to, because I'm sure you're going to connect it to an experience outside of yourself or a person outside of yourself. I'm actually talking about what is it connected to underneath. Do kind of like a reverse engineering, and we can talk about that in the masterclass of how to do that. But when you do that and you're able to uncover that root emotion, that is the thing that needs to be addressed. And once you address that, everything outside of you begins to shift because you're actually addressing the issue at the roots and not at the top. That's super important. I'm literally giving you tools on how to shift your life and change directions of the way that you're handling certain situations. This is for some of you specifically, in what I'm feeling. Complaining is the feedback. Your complaints are your emotional feedback to what's really going on. And a lot of the time, that feedback is connected to a past version of you or a past experience that you have not fully processed. So when we talk about healing, it's not about, I've been seeing so much discourse and debate about belief. It's not about that. You are not gathering information to prove to the next person how much you believe or what you believe. You're gathering this data to shift your own life experience so that you can come here and actually move through properly your emotions that you need to move through to heal your soul, to clear karma, and etc. That is why we're here. So I'll use me for an example. I've had a wound of insecurity when it comes to not being confident about expressing myself. That came from several times as a child, me not feeling like I had the space to speak or express myself freely without criticism or judgment. So now, as a 39-year-old woman who is such a multidisciplinary creative, I still have a very hard time with being seen, not because I don't think I'm worthy to be seen, but because there's a wound that taught me that my expression was not worthy enough to be heard. And so a part of my work has been what? Creating a podcast, no matter how many listeners, right? No matter how much the flow changes, but creating an avenue for me to be comfortable enough to express myself. So everything that you do and everything that you decide to do in life has purpose. You cannot just intellectualize this information that I'm giving you or that you're receiving. Even the downloads that you get from the spiritual realm, you cannot just intellectualize that because that is not even an intellectual message. It really is something that you feel in your spirit. And honestly, you're supposed to be able to decode it through your body, not through your brain. That's why this podcast is called Mindless Monday, because we're supposed to be less of our mind. A lot of the times we're trying to control what's happening. And so even when our downloads, right, or our visions or our spiritual gifts activate, we sometimes can get in a space of assumption because we're so focused on control. We got to loosen the grip. We have to loosen the grip. And that's important. Creating space and loosening the grip is super important. Okay. So as we move into this next season, right, I'm ahead of the game. I'm not starting in September. I'm starting now because I'm warning you now. I feel like I wouldn't be me if I'm an Aries. I go first. So I wouldn't be me if I wasn't giving you kind of uh, uh, a preview of what happens when the season shifts. We're moving into a different season. Okay. So you will be triggered, right? You will be in the house more. You might be triggered being in your house more. You might be triggered during holiday time. You might be triggered because, I don't know, like there's just so many things that can happen that will come up around this time. This time typically for me is a very hard time and a joyous time. I'll be celebrating 5 years of marriage this fall, but I'll also be celebrating my father being deceased for 4 years, right? I'll be remembering while I'm celebrating my anniversary, I'm also going to be remembering that my mother wasn't present at my wedding. So lots of things, right? Lots of things. But I don't want to focus so much on, well, I won't even call them negative. I just want to give you another perspective. These things that come up are the catalyst, the expectations of your family, the expectations of your friends, things that trigger you. This can become the catalyst for something very beautiful. This could be a space where you learn to set boundaries, where you learn to be still, right? Where you reactivate your spiritual practice because you need more comfort, right? This is where you can increase your self-care and your maintenance. I think I already said being still, but slowing down, not if you're just sitting in silence, but just slowing down your routine. You know, this is a very important time for us to accept. You know, I think I've heard a saying where like the leaves never complain about changing. They never complain about changing colors. And that reminds me about us as humans. Like we're always complaining when things is not going our way. And I'm talking to myself too. So this is just a reminder. This podcast literally is serving as a reminder for you to create space to be human. It is okay for you to not be happy every day, and it is okay for people to be on your nerves, and it is okay for an aligned crash out. If you don't know what aligned crash out is, I suggest you scroll back through the podcast episodes because there's an episode that talks about crashing out in an aligned way. Okay. And so, like I said, a lot of spiritual practice gets intellectualized. And if we're analyzing patterns, most of our experience, we're missing a lot. Okay. Naming an emotion is not you moving through the emotion, right? There are several different ways for you to process your emotions. And I'm not going to get into that on this podcast. I'm going to save it for my masterclass this Thursday. Tickets are still available. But there are several different ways for you to be able to properly process your emotions. And I think everybody should know how to do that because most of us were not taught. We come from generations who were taught to hold things. And then here we are, recipients, you know, we're part of that lineage, and we're recipients of that same energy of just carrying so much. I'm here to remind you that you don't have to carry that much. You do not. Okay. But you do have to face the mirror. Okay. And facing the mirror is the next layer of your journey. And I know I could hear some of my clients now that are listening to this podcast. I could feel y'all rolling your eyes, right? Because ultimately, nobody likes to do this part, you know? And I was going to say neither do I, but I'm not going to say that because I'm actually starting to fall in love with it because it's allowing me to really get to know myself deeply. Before anyone can truly love me, I have to know what it's like to love me. What is it like to really love all of me? And in order to get into that space, I have to be willing to face the fact that I have anxiety when things aren't going my way, that I could be judgmental because I'm trying to protect myself, that I could assume because I'm trying to predict the future when I'm not in alignment with myself and I'm ignoring my gut feeling or my intuition, right? I could be opinionated because that is an overactive throat chakra, something that I have learned. You know, I've kind of bounced between not saying anything and saying a lot because I'm learning the balance and the harmony between my expression, my vocal expression. I could be a quitter, right? I love to start things. And sometimes I quit because I get frustrated and I just move on to the next thing. These are things that I have to be honest about myself with, and I have to love about myself because at some point in my life, they served a purpose. So I challenge you to write down some of the things that you may consider flaws and recognize how they have served you. And also identify where they no longer need to serve you because some of them needs to be moved out. Some of those character traits need to be moved out. And that's why we talk about creating space. I've literally been burning our create space candle all week. And it's crazy because, I mean, you guys probably won't believe that I'm just like a creative master machine, right? I'll just create because I'm getting these downloads, but there are parts of me that was not embodying, right? But I don't judge myself for how fast I moved when it came to creating my product line, because everything is intentional and everything comes back around. Like the create space candle. This candle, as I burned it every single day, as I was working on my website, the affirmation is, I create room for the life I desire. It really put me in a reflective mode. And it smells like lemon zest and lavender and herbs. So that's a very clean feeling, which when I add scent to my sensorium, right, to all of my senses and to this kind of ecosystem of senses, it begins to remind me of what cleanliness feels like. It reminds me that my mind doesn't need to be cluttered. And if I'm cluttered, I need to figure out how to declutter and get back to a space of harmony. And I use harmony instead of balance because balance feels so curt and so matter of fact. But harmony for me feels like the energy is working together. And so as I was burning this create space candle, it was just reminding me of how I've created these products to be a part of a practice and how I have abandoned my practice. And I'm so glad that these messages came through and that my emotions were triggered, because it allowed me to have to ask myself, what do I need? Because if I really love myself, I'm going to constantly be asking myself, what do I need? Do I have enough room in my world for me? A lot of us have filled up our world with so many other people, other people's needs, other people's opinions, right? Other people's energy. We just talked about clearing out the aura and etc. So like when we're so full of other people, we become less of ourselves. And so create space really reminded me that I need to create room for me. I need to check in with me. What do I need first? And there should not be any guilt associated with that. There should not be any guilt associated with needing to put yourself first, because it's a necessity. If not you, then who? Who better to love you than you? You are a reflection of God. Who better to love you than you? So if your daily experience is not including you first, we have to shift that, especially with these times that we're moving into, because you will literally feel like you're being taken over by a current of emotions when you're triggered. And then you'll get frustrated and we'll kind of sink down into these spaces where we feel a little depressed or we feel a little hopelessness and etc. I guess I'm just being honest. If none of you guys feel that, cool, but I'm going to be honest. There are times where I just feel really down because of all the things that I have going on in my mind. And so it's important that I get back to a space of being less of my mind and more of my spirit, because that is where the comfort is. That is where the backup is. That is where the wisdom is, in the spirit. There's this girl on Instagram. She made a post and it was like, all of your backup is in the spirit. And she kept saying it. All of your backup is in the spirit. All of my backup is in the spirit. And that's what's playing in my mind right now. All of our backup, all of our comfort, all of our clarity, all of our remedies, our salves, our balms, our antidotes, they're in the spirit. So if you are not doing the work to find and create a spiritual practice, you are missing out on the missing pieces that you need to help you to navigate your triggers and to navigate your emotions that are wanting to be processed. So when it comes to spiritual practice, again, there's so many different ways, but you do want to find something that makes sense to you. Everybody don't need to sit in a corner and have their legs crossed with their eyes closed. That does not work for everybody. There are literally like 104 ways to meditate. Okay? There's so many different things that you can do that literally will shift your awareness and get you to a more harmonized space. So really, at the end of the day, creating space is just about getting back to the basics. I got to pull us back to the basics because we love to stay in the realm of information and we love to be able to know what's going to happen and wait for this abundance and all of these things. But if you do not go back to the ground and put your feet on the ground, some of these currents will carry you away. And the very thing that you may have manifested will be very hard to maintain. So take this as God's little wink to you, a wink from the universe to remind you to get back to your spirit and to get back to the basics. Okay? So I'm going to be getting back to the basics this week, and I'm going to be discussing what that entails in my masterclass this Thursday. The admission is $44. Let me tell you something. I really love our spiritual community. I love our virtual community. I love it because it's such an authentic space. I feel so supported. I feel so seen. I feel understood. And I love being able to share in a space where there's other like-minded individuals. So that's this Thursday, August 20th. It's the currency masterclass. So we're going to be doing an audit of your energy currency. We're also going to be talking about how to move through the current, as well as having a Q&A and some other things. So we allow the class to kind of just flow. And I'm excited. I'm excited. Also, I haven't done a discount in a while. I know y'all noticed. You're probably like, girl, we used to be getting discounts every Monday. I know. But a part of my my audit of my currency, okay, a part of my audit was understanding that everything that I create doesn't need to be discounted every week. Okay, because there's value in the intention that I put in. There's value in the products. Okay, and there's value in the cost of the materials. Okay, so listen, on sale or not, the products are going to do what they do. And shout out to y'all who consistently purchase from my website. I am really working on kind of rewarding you guys for that, especially those who continue to spend over and over again. I think I'm going to be doing some giveaways a little more often, and that's kind of why I shifted the weekly discounts so that I can make space for these different giveaways as well. But I am giving you guys a discount today. There is a discount on our Create Space candle. I've been talking about it so much, so I said, why not put it on sale? I described it to you a little bit earlier. It's going to be 30% off. Okay. 30% off of, I think it's the normal price is $45. So 30% off of $45. And then the smaller version, the 10 version is $20. So it'll be 30% off of that. Listen, we are moving through some changes. But I am happy to say that we have two different versions, of our candles coming this fall, which is our cream, our stone version, and then we have the chocolate brown. Right now, what's in stock is the chocolate brown, and honestly, that's my favorite. So, and when I say chocolate brown, I'm talking about the vessel. The vessel is a deep chocolate brown. So, that's what's in stock. And then the 10 candles are the copper. And so those will stay. The copper will stay. I love copper. Copper is so healing. You could also reuse the 10 or the vessel when you're done. So yeah, 30% off. There's no code needed. Just log on to KimiSean.com. That's KIMEISHON.com so that you can check out and get your Create Space candle so you can allow that to be a part of your practice. It also smells really good. And that's super important too. When we have things around us like lemon or things that are citrus, it helps to elevate and uplift the atmosphere and essentially your energy. So yeah, get you a create space candle. Super important. But also I just want you to know, as I wrap this up, you're not doing this alone. I say this to you every single week, but I want to remind you that you're not alone. Most of the messages that I get are coming from my own experiences and God showing itself through my experiences. And so even today, me being more of at a more grounded space is really just showing you how much stillness and internal work I've been moving through this week, because I've been able to articulate myself without kind of getting super emotional and being able to kind of like narrate what's happening in such a smooth, harmonious way. And that's a reflection of the work that I'm doing. So I just want you to know that you're not alone. Okay. And if you ever feel alone, I want you to know that even if we have feelings of loneliness, that doesn't make it a fact. Sometimes we may not have physical people around us, but you are always supported because what? All of your backup is in the spirit. But if you would like to be a part of a community and meet other people who are navigating their currents and navigating their lives so that you have physical community, I invite you to our masterclass this Thursday. The link is in the show notes, and I hope to see you guys there. But this is a great space. Mindless Monday is a great space. This podcast is a great thing that has come out of my own healing, and I'm so happy that you guys are here. I pray that this episode reminds you that you deserve to fall in love with yourself and that you deserve to be the priority in your own space, in your own aura, and in your own life. Check in with yourself. Before you check, a lot of people say check on the strong friend. You are the strong friend. Check on and check in with yourself. Listen, I'm telling myself that too, and I'm reminding you that I'm with you as you journey. You know why? Because I'm on my journey too. Until next time, peace. I did the thing. I video myself. I know it's not perfect, but I did the thing and I'm happy about it. Go girl. You did it. You did it. Go girl. I hope you enjoy.